Okay, welcome back, everybody. This is Mr. Anderson, and we are on part 2 of this Aether Detour. So, this video will be about 20 minutes or so. I'm not sure what my next video will be. I should go ahead and just do part 3 of this, hence the word detour. But either way, let's get into this. Theosophy, world's biggest cult, as it pertains to Aether. Helena Blavatsky, of course. So going right into Isis Unveiled. Astral light, the same as the sidereal light of Paracelsus and other Hermetic philosophers. Physically, it is the ether of modern science. Metaphysically, and in its spiritual or occult sense, ether is a great deal more and is often than is often imagined. In occult physics and alchemy, alchemists and hermeticists believe that their astral or sidereal ether, besides the above properties of sulfur and white and red magnesia or manganese, is the anima mundi, the workshop of nature and all the cosmos, spiritually as well as physically. The Grand Magisterium asserts itself in a phenomenon of mesmerism, in the levitation of human and inert objects, which may be called the ether from its spiritual aspect. And in part 3, I will briefly go into the mesmerism thing. And the learned authors of the unseen universe, abandoning their electrobiological theory, begin to perceive in the universal ether the possibility that is a photographic album of Ein Sof, the boundless. If I can talk right today. When the serpent represents eternity and immortality, it encircles the world, biting its tail, and thus offering no solution of continuity. It then becomes the astral light. The disciples of the school of Pherecydes taught that ether, Zeus or Zen, is the highest empyrean heaven, which encloses the supernatural world, and its light, the astral, is the concentrated primordial element. Now, it is not natural to imagine that a universe of this nature, which we have no reason to think exists, which we have reason to think exists, is connected by bonds of energy with the visible universe and also capable of receiving energy from it. May we not regard ether or the medium as not merely a bridge between one order of things and another, forming it as it were a species of cement, in virtue of which the various orders of a universe are welded together and made into one. In fine, what we generally call ether may not be a mere medium, but a medium plus the invisible order of things, so that when the motions of the visible universe are transferred into ether, part of them are conveyed as a bridge into the invisible universe, and are there made of use and stored up. Nay, it is even necessary to retain the conception of a bridge. May we not at once say when energy is carried from matter into ether, it is carried from the visible into the invisible, and that when it is carried from ether to matter, it is carried from the invisible to the visible. So in Kabbalah, they're always looking for that bridge into the other world. How timid would appear to some Kabbalists these tentative efforts to solve the great mystery of the universal ether. Although so far in advance of anything propounded by contemporary philosophers, what the intelligent explorers of the hidden universe speculate upon was to the masters of Hermetic philosophy familiar science. To them, ether was not merely a bridge connecting the seen and unseen sides of the universe, but across its span their daring feet followed the road that led to the mysterious gates which modern speculators either will not or cannot unlock. That's very poetic, but it's still religious dogma. That's where that's the road that their feet are leading them on. As the planets differ in size, distance, and activity, so differ in intensity their impulses upon the ether or astral light, and the magnetic or other subtle forces radiated by them in certain aspects of the heavens. Music is the combination and modulation of sounds, and sound is the effect produced by the vibration of the ether. Now, if the impulses communicated to the ether by the different planets may be likened to the tones produced by different notes of a musical instrument, it is not difficult to conceive that the Pythagorean music of the spheres is something more than a mere fancy, and that certain planetary aspects may imply disturbances in the ether of our planet, and certain others rest in harmony. So we're now backing up the dogma of Pythagoras with this. What then is the ether in the region above, and what are the influences or forms that descend from thence? The spirits of creatures, the Pythagoreans hold, who are emanations of the most sublimated portions of ether, emanations, breaths, but not forms. Ether is incorruptible. All philosophers agree in that, and which is incorruptible is so far from being annihilated that when it gets rid of the form, it lays a good claim to immortality. But what is that which has no body, no form, which is imponderable, invisible, and indivisible, which exists and is yet is not? Ask the Buddhist. It is nirvana, is the answer. It is nothing, not a region, but rather a state. When once nirvana is reached, man is exempt from the effects of the four truths, for an effect can only be produced through a certain cause, and every cause is annihilated in this state. The existence of spirit in the common mediator, the ether, is denied by materialism, while theology makes it a personal God. The Kabbalist holds that both are wrong, saying that in ether, the elements represent but matter, the blind cosmic forces of nature, and spirit, the intelligence which directs them, the Hermetic, Orphic, and Pythagorean cosmogonical doctrines, as well as those of the Sanchonothan, I don't know how to pronounce some of this stuff, and Berosus, are all based upon one irrefutable formula, that the ether and chaos, or in the Platonic language, mind and matter, were the two primeval and eternal principles of the universe, utterly independent of anything else. The former was an all-vivifying intellectual principle, the chaos, a shapeless liquid principle with no form or sense, from which the union of the two sprung into existence, the universe, or rather the universal world, the first androgynous deity, the chaotic matter becoming its body, and ether the soul. The fire stolen by Prometheus had fallen down in the struggle to earth, and embraced the lower regions of the sky and settled in the waves of the universal ether as the potential Akasha of the Hindu rites. Let me repeat to you again, Pythagoras, Plato, Timaeus of Locris, and the old Alexandrian school derived the soul of man, or his higher principles and attributes, from the universal world soul, the latter being, according to their teachings, ether. Therefore, neither of these principles can be unalloyed essence of the Pythagorean monas or our Atma Buddhi, because the anima mundi is but the effect, the subjective emanation, or rather radiation of the former. But the human spirit, or the individuality, the reincarnating spiritual ego, and buddhi, the spiritual soul, are pre-existent. But while the former exists as a distinct entity, an individualization, the soul exists as a pre-existing breath, an unscient portion of the intelligible whole. Both were originally formed from the eternal ocean of light, but as the fire philosophers, the medieval Theosophists, expressed it, there is a visible as well as invisible spirit in fire. They made a difference between the anima bruta and the anima divina, and Empedocles firmly believed all men and animals possess two souls, and in Aristotle we find that he calls one the reasoning soul and the other the animal soul. According to these philosophers, the reasoning soul comes from within the universal soul, and the other from without. The fifth element, now advocated quite freely by science, with a capital S, is not the ether hypothesized by Sir Isaac Newton, although he calls it by that name, having associated with it in his mind probably with the ether father-mother of antiquity. As Newton intuitionally says, nature is a perpetual circulatory worker, generating fluids out of solids, fixed things out of volatile, and volatile out of fixed, subtle out of gross, and gross out of subtle. Thus, perhaps, may all things be originated from ether. Fire is ether in its purest form, and hence is not regarded as matter, but is the unity of ether, the second manifested deity, and its universality. But there are two fires, and a distinction is made between them and the occult teachings. The first, or the purely formless and invisible fire concealed in the central spiritual sun, is spoken of as triple metaphysically, while the fire of the manifested cosmos is septenary, throughout both the universe and our solar system. The six-pointed star refers to the six forces or powers of nature, the six planes, principles, all synthesized by the seventh, or the central point in the star. All these, the upper and lower hierarchies included, emanate from the heavenly or celestial Virgin, the great mother in all religions, the androgyne, the Sephira Adam Kadmon. In its unity, primordial light is the seventh or highest principle. Davi Prakriti, the light of the unmanifested Logos. But in its differentiation, it becomes Fohat, or the seven suns. The former is symbolized by the central point in the double triangle, which you can see right there, in the logo for Theosophy. The double triangle. The latter by the hexagon itself, or the six limbs of the microprosopus, the seventh being Malkuth, the bride of the Christian Kabbalist, or our earth. Hence the expressions, the first after the one is divine fire, the second fire and ether, the third is composed of fire, ether, and water, the fourth fire, ether, water, and air. The one is not concerned with man-bearing globes, but with the inner invisible spheres. The firstborn are the life, the heart, and the pulse of the universe. The second are of its mind or consciousness. So the whole sphere thing, again, is a religious dogma. It's philosophy, which philosophy is at the heart of all religion. There is no religion without philosophy in it. Sorry, I had to cough for a second. Ether, this hypothetical protus, one of the representative fictions of modern science, which nevertheless was long accepted, is one of the lower principles of what we call primordial substance, akasha in Sanskrit. One of the dreams of old, in which has now become again the dream of modern science. It is the greatest, just as it is the boldest, of the surviving speculations of ancient philosophers. For the occultists, however, both ether and the primordial substance are a reality. To put it plainly, ether is the astral light, and the primordial substance is akasha, the upadi of divine thought. That chaos, however, became the soul of the world, according to Plato and the Pythagoreans. According to Hindu teaching, deity in the shape of ether pervades all things, and it was so called, and it was therefore by the theurgists the living fire, or the spirit of light, and sometimes Magnes. It was the highest deity itself which, according to Plato, built the universe in the geometrical form of the dodecahedron, which I'll go into a little bit in part 3. Continuing, and its first begotten was born of chaos in the primordial light, the celestial sun. This is why the occultists and even some Kabbalists, whether they regard or not those creative forces as living and conscious entities, and one does not see why they should not be accepted, will never confuse the cause with the effect and accept the spirit of the earth for the Parabrum or Ein Sof. At all events, they know well the true nature of what was called Father Ether by the Greeks, Jupiter, Titan, etc., etc. They know that the soul of the astral light is divine, and its body, the light waves on the lower plane, infernal. The light is symbolized by the magic head of the Zohar, the double face on the double pyramid, the black pyramid rising against a pure white ground, with a white head and face within its black triangle. The white pyramid inverted, the reflection of the first in the dark waters, showing the black reflection of the white face. This is the astral light, or daemon es deus inversus. And there is that great Kabbalistic symbol of the Zohar. And this is the Kabbalistic abstract trinity, so unceremoniously anthropomorphized by the fathers. From this triple one emanated the whole cosmos. First from one emanated number 2, or air, the creative element, and then number 3, water, proceeded from the air. Ether or fire complete the mystic 4, the Arba'il, In the Eastern doctrine, fire is the first element, ether synthesizing the whole, since it contains all of them. The Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Official science knows nothing, and now you know why I would even say that at the heart of this Orthodox Christianity stuff is Kabbalah. Official science knows nothing to this day of the constitution of ether. Let science call it matter, if it likes. Only neither as Akasha nor as the one sacred ether of the Greeks is it to be found in any of the states of matter known to modern physics. It is matter on quite another plane of perception and being, and it can neither be analyzed by scientific apparatus, appreciated, nor even conceived by scientific imagination, unless the possessors thereof study the occult sciences. That which follows proves this statement. For this hypostasid half-concept is, in the view of all other physicists, not only imponderable, but destitute of cohesive chemical, thermal, electric, and magnetic forces, of all which forces, according to occultism, ether is the source of cause. Not only through space, but filling every point of our solar system, for it is the physical residue, so to say, of ether, its lining in our plane, either having to serve other cosmic and terrestrial purposes besides being the agent for transmitting light. See, it's the medium for light, which I'm sure you've heard before. It is the astral fluid or light of the Kabbalists and the 7 rays of the sun Vishnu. Ether connects sun with the planet, planet with planet, man with planet, man with man. Without ether, there could be no communication in the universe, no light, no heat, no phenomenon of motion. So it is the religious belief of the all-pervading medium. What is the material universe composed of? Ether, matter, and energy is the answer. We stop to ask, what is ether? And Mr. Lang answers in the name of science. Ether is not actually known to us by any test of which the senses can take cognizance, but it is a sort of mathematical substance which we are compelled to assume in order to account for phenomena of light and heat. And what is matter? Do you know more about it than you do about the hypothetical agent, ether? He's saying, what do you know about matter anyway? Which, in of itself, is a fair question. Chaos is called, and we're almost done here, but chaos is called senseless by the ancients because it's represented and contained in itself. Chaos and space being synonymous, all the elements in their rudimentary, undifferentiated state, they made of ether the 5th element, the synthesis of the other 4. For the ether of the Greek philosophers is not its dregs, of which they indeed knew more than science does now, which are rightly enough supposed to act as an agent for many forces that manifest on earth. Their ether was the Akasha of the Hindus. The ether accepted in physics is but one of its subdivisions on our plane, the astral light of the Kabbalists, with all of its evil as well as good effects, with the dualism. In the movie, the 5th element is the life force itself, which animates the inanimate. The other 4 elements are earth, air, fire, and water. Lilu represents this element. She is arrayed against a vast anti-life force, a sort of black hole of death. So that concludes this part 2 of Ether. Part 3 will go a little bit into Tesla and a little bit into the Platonic solids, and then we'll finish off this series, and at the end I'll have some leads for you to follow up on if you would like to look more into this stuff, and then we'll get back to the original series. Thank you very much for checking it out. If you like it, if you like the content, then like, share, subscribe, and all that kind of stuff. Thank you, and peace out.